Hi,
Catherine. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Yeah, doing great, thank you. And it's such a pleasure to be able to speak to you because I'm a fan of your work anyway. But this film, just real gut punch of a movie and such a compelling film as well. So I wanted to start off talking to you. And I'm curious, what was it when you read the screenplay that made this a story as a filmmaker you wanted to tell? Because there's just so many layers to it, which I just love delving into as an audience member.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, I was just thinking so much about, when a person looks back at their life and has regrets or moments that they could have done something different. And then they are trying, Brian Cox's character is trying to figure out a way to reconnect, to make amends, to change that, his perception, to change that cycle of violence, to show his daughter that he's grown as a man. So that was really interesting to see. And of course, the daughter is so played by Kate Beckinsale, awesomely, so wounded and has so much, her guard up so much because she's been disappointed so much. Can these two ever feel good about their relationship? Can she ever let him back in, and trust him? And, I just thought that, and then the idea of multi-generational violence, and when is violence needed or not needed and are called for? How can she break that cycle? All those layers were so fascinating.
Yeah, and Brian Cox, he is such a great actor and always very wonderfully outspoken when you see him in interviews. But I'm curious for you as the director, what was it your dynamic like working with him, particularly as he takes on this role of Max, a man with again a lot of different layers?
Well, it was so interesting because Brian, of course, in person is, obviously a consummate actor. He's played so many iconic roles, of course, Logan Roy and many other ones. And he just felt like from the beginning, he told me he just got this character. He felt this character. He felt his regrets. He felt all the things he'd been through because I just know this character. I know what I want to do with it. I'm like, wow, that's pretty exciting. And we did talk about the different things in his life, but I think Brian just had a great, like, just gut instinct from the beginning, what he wanted to do. And then, of course, he and Kate and he and Christopher, his grandson, play off very beautifully together.
Yeah, and because you mentioned Kate a second ago, and so she is someone I think a lot of our readers will know maybe from her action roles, but this is such a different departure from those. And I'm curious, when it came to casting her as Maxine, what was it for you that made her right to play this mother and daughter? Because she is just wonderful in the movie.
She's so good. And I had seen her in like that beautiful small movie Farming. Did you ever see that one?
Yeah.
And she just completely transformed herself into somebody that was not the glamorous action star. And I thought, wow, Kate really can be, go very, very deep. And we don't see her do that very often. So I just thought, it would be fascinating to see her dive into this person that, the glamour has kind of passed her by in a way. She did have her moment, on Almost Famous moment in Vegas dancing. Then she got pregnant, had the kid, and had a very no role models, that's for sure. And now she's suddenly a single mom and just struggling, on the other side, the suburb, the outskirts of Vegas.
Yeah, and the bond between Max, Maxine, and Ezra, and Christopher, what a really fantastic performance he delivers as a young actor in this movie. But that bond, I think, obviously, it's the heart of the story. So, what was your role in really helping those three find this dynamic? And because they just come across as a very real family over the course of the film.
Yeah, it's kind of cool because each of them are very, I guess, like every time I would watch them when they weren't shooting, I could just see them like having fun together. They're each very, they've got their creativity. They're each quite funny and like we're always joking around, so that, you know, even in our first days of like the hair and makeup test, or the, you know, the early days in rehearsals or wardrobe fittings, you could see the sparks kind of flying already, the curiosity about each other. And Christopher, you know, those are pretty daunting people to do, you know, as a 12-year-old, you know, just suddenly you're acting with Brian Cox and you're doing a ton of scenes with him and Kate, you know, and he really was absolutely fearless, actually. You know, he didn't freak out about it all. He knew what he wanted, you know, he felt that character. He also felt that character like Brian did.
Yeah, amazing work from him. And, you know, on the one hand, as you said, you are dealing with this violence and trauma. And, you know, it's quite sweet seeing this family come back together, like that day they spend at the pool, for example. But then we have, in contrast, those quite shocking, violent moments, like what happens in the backyard. So what was it like for you to explore that contrast? Because it's two very different sides to this story.
Right. Well, as it is, as we mentioned, and you mentioned in the script, the cycle of violence. How can you break this cycle of violence? And, you know, Kate's character was raised with it, and then she married it into it again. She's trying to protect her son from it. The son is experiencing violence at school too. So the actual day at the swimming pool, that was a pretty important day for me. I really wanted that to be fun, because there's not too much lightness. There's not too many scenes where you really feel that this family had that moment of just kind of like a beautiful connection. So first we were going to film it like in the reservoir near there in the lake. Is it Lake Mead, or I forget which lake? And that was all dried up, and it was 115 degrees. I'm like, they will not be able to have fun here. That's the one where you're starting to see the dead bodies pop out of the lake as the water goes. I'm like, we better just make it at a fun swimming pool or something where we can really enjoy that moment and be silly for a few seconds, you know. And Brian, you see his silly side come out. It's so cool. But then you have the birthday party, which should have been another fun, positive occasion. And the kid, in a very hopeful way, invited his father, unfortunately, and the father just could not handle it, you know. And Brian, nobody could contain themselves. That was a very shocking moment too, you know, which Tyson Ritter, you know, is the most lovely person. I worked with him on another movie, and I just think of him as all sunshine and creativity and brightness and fun. But I said, are you going to be able to find that side of you that's going to like lash out and like uncontrollable, you know, trigger points? And he said, yeah, I think I can. So, you know, I think all those combinations really worked in a very explosive way.
Yeah, and obviously we see an explosive side of Max in that scene. And I think people are used to seeing Brian be verbally explosive in something like Succession, for example. But to see him get physical here, was he really up for the challenge of those scenes? And because he just unleashes this, again, this huge amount of violence, and it's a hell of a scene.
Yeah, that's what I thought exactly what you just said. I thought was so interesting. In Succession, it's all verbal. We don't really see him. You know, he doesn't throw any punches, does he? No. But verbal punches. And in this one, he goes, "Oh hell yeah, I'm doing it." He wanted to do it. He goes, "I don't need a stunt double. You know, I'm going to do it all." I'm like, well, I might have a double there just in case you're getting beat up. I don't need it. I've got it. You know, and he was tough. Even that day was like 110 degrees, and he just still got out there and fighting. I mean, that man is, you know, unbelievable.
Oh, amazing. And as someone from the UK who obviously isn't overly familiar with Las Vegas, apart from how it's usually portrayed in films and
Right.
television, it was really interesting to obviously see this completely different side of the city away from that strip. So what do you think made this the right setting to tell this story without obviously hitting those landmarks and that familiar sort of imagery we've seen so much before?
Yeah, I think it was great because you see that these people had their dreams, like the Almost Famous, the backside of Vegas, you know, that Kate's character had wanted to be a dancer, you know, and she had been up on the stage, but that time passed. But when soon she had her kid and she's a single mom, you know, you kind of somewhat age out of that. So, you know, that she's clinging to it. She still looks amazing in the movie, but she's not there. She's on the backside. And also, you know, Brian Cox's character, you know, reaching for fame as a boxer, not quite making it. So you felt like even at the boxing gym, Ernie Hudson, who's so awesome, you know, we drive up to the gym and you see the back of a billboard there. It's like, it's in reach, and they have to drive past the strip to get to school. I mean, that's what's kind of fun. To get a lot of places in Vegas, you drive down the strip. So you're passing all this glamour, but you're just driving past.
Oh, amazing. And on another note, while I have you, I know obviously you really set the tone for the Twilight franchise with that first movie. And I think that one remains a favorite for a lot of people. And of course, now supposedly a reboot is on the way as a TV series. So would you ever go back to that franchise, or has that ship almost sailed for you, do you think?
Well, you know, I think it was, I mean, you know, amazing to be part of that and really see how many lives it kind of touched, and some people in very profound way. They found their friends, you know, all global friendship, and saved people's lives. I've had people telling me amazing stories, you know, but you know, and I love the story. So, you know, if it ever worked out, you know, it could be fun to revisit it, but we already had a beautiful experience with it. So I appreciate what I had, and, you know, what it meant to everybody. And it's fun because it's the 15th year anniversary this year. And then you've got a whole new round of people on TikTok falling in love with it and making new crazy parodies of it. And, you know, it's so fun. What we do in the shadows, the vampire baseball scene. I mean, I love it that it just keeps living on, you know.
Yeah, and it must be quite surreal to see, obviously, Kristen and Robert, how their careers have evolved. And I mean, I don't think you could have ever expected Robert to be Batman, for example, after Twilight. But yeah, what transformation.
Yes, and one thing that's so great about Twilight, it gave them the clout or the power to be able to greenlight, Rob and Kristen greenlight a lot of beautiful indie films, smaller films, unique films that might never have been made. So they really took their situation and helped, like, the Sundance, you know, indie film world, you know, in a beautiful way. But I think I knew that in a way because they were both very indie kids, indie music, books, you know. So it was great that they are able to use their unique world, you know, unique vision.
Yeah,
And
for sure. And I mentioned Batman there, and talking of superheroes, is that a genre that interests you as a director, or would you ever be tempted to head down maybe one of those blockbusters?
oh yeah, I mean, that is exciting to me. And, you know, of course, what, you know, in Rob's Batman, it's very layered and just so interesting. So I think, of course, the ones that have the most deep character issues, you know, interest me the most. Like, oh my God, you know, if you did have the obviously the metaphors for, you know, what those kind of powers are representing. Yeah, it's great. It's exciting.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And well, this is a very exciting film as well. And just one final question for you, Catherine. I'm not going to get into spoilers, but the way the film ends is going to really stick with me for a long time. And I'm curious, when you're bringing characters like this to life on screen, do they stick with you for a long time? And do you think about what came for them next? Or is it easy to move on when you embark on a new project, would you say?
Well, no, I mean, that it did go deep. You know, you
Mm.
do feel like, where is that boy going to end up? You know, I'm so curious. I want to know how the son is going to, you know, keep going. I want to know what's going to happen, you know, to actually every character. I'm really fascinated, like, what's going to happen, the next step of the husband's character, you know, what's going to happen, how is Kate's character going to evolve and blossom now, you know. So yeah, it's fascinating. Of course, we director, we end up in the editing room with it for quite a while, so we do get to spend a little more time.
Oh, amazing. Well, this is such a special film. I can't wait for people to check it out in theaters this Friday. And Catherine, thank you so much for your time. It's been such a pleasure speaking to you today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.